Well, Emily, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back.
So, where have you been for the past few weeks? Why have I been stuck with Daniel this whole time?
I've been studying for and passing my Series 65 Investment Advisor Representative exam.
Well, let's talk about that and your experience with becoming a financial planner. Welcome to the Science of Wealth, where we discuss the science behind financial planning and the art of learning and applying it. All right, so let's start with the Series 65. What is it?
Well, it's the exam that I took, but it's the securities license required for individuals to act as investment advisors, is the fun answer. It was a 3-hour test that I took, 140 questions, just testing competency and knowledge.
The things we all hope and wish that our professionals have. So, what does it cover? 140 questions is a pretty big list.
Yeah, I mean, there's different sections. Some of it is what you'd expect: equity securities, debt securities, things like that. There is a lot of things on regulatory rules, making sure I know I'm not allowed to do insider trading, front running, things like that, which are obvious, but good to cover. There was some basic economic kind of things, fiscal policy, what you would expect, yield curves. There was a section at the end about like investment recommendations and specifically dealing with like client situations, which is a little more fun. They were more like a case study style question, a little bit on retirement planning and things like that, risks versus returns.
So, all the things you'd hope somebody would know about investing, generally speaking.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's fair. So, how did you go about studying for that?
Well, taking your retirement planning class at CU helped with about 5% of it, so that was handy. It wasn't a very big portion of it, but I got all those. And then there's been a course that I've been completing for the last few months to help prepare for it, which kind of goes over all the sections. Had a bunch of practice exams, which is helpful. It's kind of nice to get into the habit of taking a long test, see what that's about.
Sure. And it's sort of a weird thing about pass-fail exams, right? In school, in academia, you're trying to get a grade, so then the quality of your answers and kind of getting as many right answers as possible matters. But with regulatory exams, it's just, hey, you passed and you're licensed, or you didn't pass and you're not licensed. So it's sort of a bit of a Schrodinger's cat, Schrodinger's box sort of problem where it's like, all right, how much do you study to pass? And technically, you just have to get enough answers right to pass, and everything above that is technically not necessary. And then at the same time, if you don't study enough, then you get to wait and you get to retake and go through all that fun stuff. So it's certainly a bit of a challenge to going through that process. I remember I sat my licenses back in 2015, and I think I took 2 months to prepare for my first exam, and then 2 weeks to prepare for my next exam, and then like 1 week to prepare for the next 3 exams because the insurance exams are insanely easy compared to the securities ones. But you just have to get sort of into a mindset and just go for it. So, what did you learn while you were studying for the exam that you knew nothing about prior, or were maybe just surprised to learn about? What was the valuable? Oh, hey, I feel like people should know this sort of thing.
It was actually very reassuring to me as just an also regular individual in this world to know how many different agencies and people are keeping track of people in our industry. Before this, I didn't really have any specific industry knowledge about the industry and securities laws. You hear about things in the news like Martha Stewart's been arrested for insider trading and that's bad. Okay, great. Everyone knows that. But they really are keeping track. There's a lot of hoops we jump through now to make sure that we don't do any of the above things I've talked about.
I think the greater challenge there is that a lot of the things you learn about regulation in financial services is that there's not a lot of prevention. There's just a lot of retribution. There's not a lot regulators can do to stop bad things from happening. But when they catch people doing bad things, they come out in a fury. Some of the fines in this industry are tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. People go to prison for decades. It's quite interesting. And the sad part is that there's no backstop for that. Like there's no FDIC insurance for malfeasance. necessarily, and there's SIPC and things like that. But on some level, it's just interesting to realize how many rules there are. But it's unfortunate at the same time that there's not a lot up front that can really prevent bad things from happening. It tends to be a lot of investigation and follow up around something that's already gone down.
Yeah, that is true. That sounds about right. There was a lot of them testing me over and over on what happens if you mess up. We want to make sure you know, and you are scared.
Well, now that they've put the fear of God, the SEC, something like that, now that they put that into you, hopefully you will take that to heart and you shall do a good job and never make a mistake. So let's go ahead and zoom out. You've been here at My Wealth Planners now for over a year and about a year and a month, and you had no background in finance before you came to work at the firm. So let's just talk about it from the beginning. What was your impression of finance as an industry or financial planning before you came to work here?
It seemed like a very big, imposing thing. And then after working here, it's actually quite personal and specific. I was very pleasantly surprised to find out.
Well, I mean that's good news. It's interesting. Financial planning is maybe the squishiest part of finance, so I think there's a little bit of a bit of a smile I get to have about that because there's definitely some parts of finance that are just nothing but spreadsheets and cubicles. But I do think that of all the places to be in finance, this is perhaps the most pleasant, at least as a general rule. So then, what attracted you to a particular position? Why did you want to get a job as a financial planning assistant in the first place?
Well, I don't think it's a secret that my dream was not to be your assistant forever. It was more to get my foot in the door so I could work my way up and not be your assistant forever, as much fun as that has been. I definitely liked the opportunity to grow and learn, and finance in general, personal financial planning, I should say, is it seemed like the perfect mix of like being able to make a good impression on people's lives, make a difference, be personally involved. I was holding out hope that it was what I thought it would be and not be the big imposing kind of finance job. So I was more wanting to be your assistant for years so I could get to here.
Well, congratulations on getting to here. It's been a long time coming. Uh, how do you think the application interview process went? Was that sort of what you were expecting, or was that completely different?
I don't know if I had any expectations about it. It was more your personal style. You do not give anything away in interviews. You're very just monotone the whole time. You're not giving anything away. So leaving the interview, I wasn't really sure how well I'd done. I think the conversational portion I had done well with, but my lack of experience in finance, I was kind of figuring like, he's going to pick someone that has done this before and knows more than I do. So I don't know if I was overly optimistic leaving because I figured you had a lot of applicants that were a better fit than me. But, I had prepared ahead of time. You were good enough to give us like the employee benefits guide and things beforehand that was available to me to read through and then be able to have questions about, as well as trying to look you up and look at the website and, be as prepped as I could for the interview, which I hoped made a difference. I guess I don't actually know, but I left the interview not really knowing, I guess. I was just waiting to hear back from you, see what you thought.
Sure. And as I think Caitlin could tell you, and for that matter, many of our friends and clients could tell you, I was really tortured over who to pick from that one. So I guess I'll give a little insight into that for the good of anybody who's ever applying for a position in a financial planning firm or an entry level position. So you mentioned a couple of things in there that I think are super important, which is you did the homework. And it wasn't explicit homework. It wasn't an assignment in your application. You must review the website. You must read the guide and so on. But it behooves you to do so, right? Because the thing that distinguished you probably more than anything in the conversation is that you had actually done the reading, you'd looked to the background, and you didn't have answers to all the questions that could create, right? You asked questions in your interview about sort of the specificity of certain things. How does this work? How does that work? I read this, but what does that mean? And that showed that you'd taken a look at it, whereas a lot of candidates came in and they just clearly didn't know anything about the firm. It was just, we could have been a block of white marble, right? And they would have had the exact same understanding of us as they would have had of that block of white marble. It just wouldn't have done any good to talk to them about our style of work or what differentiates us or who we work with or how we do business. And so that was a big standout. I think on a resume standpoint, the thing that also stood out was you did not have a finance background, and we had an applicant pool of about 110 people. We interviewed about 10 people, and in the interview group, 5 people had finance experience. And you topped over essentially all of them, a because you've done the homework and you interviewed very well, but also because in your resume you had a strong history of what I'll call human experience, right? You have worked in hospice, you've worked in healthcare, you owned a coffee shop, so you had business experience, and that then creates leadership experience, customer service experience, right? Really providing a really human touch to your resume. Whereas some people do just have pure finance, and finance is great and it's a skill, and obviously we need that in a financial planning firm. But I think for anybody who's worried that their resume is not financially aligned, keep in mind experiences things like a waiter working on healthcare, right? And those sorts of things show that you have the ability to work with people. And financial planning is above all a people business more than anything, because the math is the math, the numbers are the numbers, money is money. The most interesting and unique part of what we do is relating to and understanding the clients we work with and helping them arrive at the accomplishment of their life goals, not simply just saying, hey, invest this way and you'll get returns and it'll be good. So anyway, that's a bit of my tirade on really working through the application process. So you got the job. What were your first impressions of the firm?
I think the first thing that stood out to me when I started was one of the first days here, you sat down next to me at my desk and had me pull up the system we use that has all our clients in it. And there's these little yellow memo notes in the corner that we can edit with just little details if we want to. And you had me go through and you sat next to me and I had to type in all these little notes on people that you were pulling completely out of your head. You knew every single client, you knew their names, their spouses' names, where they worked, little details. Oh, they just had a baby 6 months ago. Oh, he's looking at a new job soon. He's going to do this. He's originally from Minnesota. Write that down. You had memorized all of these details about all of your clients. You have a very long list of people you work with, and you had made a point of knowing all of them personally and remembering them and really trying to impress upon me that you expected me to learn that too. Like, pay attention, learn who these individuals are. They're not just account numbers. This guy's from San Diego and he really likes dogs, whatever. That stood out to me a lot in my first few days of working here. And I really, really liked it and was impressed that you didn't have any notes in there. You just put them in so I could read them and memorize, but you knew everybody.
Yeah. I mean, as I just said before, right? This is a people business. Um, you know, investment management is a commodity. Buying insurance or selling insurance is a commodity. Financial products are commoditized, right? The difference between bank A and bank B is essentially, what is the interest rate on your CD, right? There's so much in finance that we don't have power over because the math is the math. But really, one of the most important things we can do as financial planners is recognize our clients as people, as individuals, to know them as individuals and not simply think of them just as a account or as a set of products or something like that. It's really to recognize them on a human level and think of them in that sense first, regardless what their financial circumstances are. So I'm glad, if anything stuck on you, that was the thing that you took away. I was really worried it was just going to be make sure you use two-factor authentication or something, which is a good lesson, but maybe not the most important thing to learn. So what surprised you about working at a financial planning firm? What has been sort of the thing that just was completely unexpected?
I think how important the ongoing relationships are. I thought there might be a higher percentage of people that just want to meet, get a plan, make sure they're in a good place, and then maybe not continue to keep your services. But being able to see the ongoing impact and seeing that everyone else feels the same, you do your quarterly meetings with everyone, you keep up to date on their lives, and that is so important. And again, I've been glad to see that. It's I was worried it would be meeting people, getting to see the story, and never getting to see the end results. I like keeping track of everyone and meeting every quarter and then being, oh, I did end up getting that car that I was looking at buying, and this is what I decided. Or, we did have a baby. We have someone on the way to plan for. I love the ongoing relationships, and it was another pleasant surprise to see that we really get to do that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, about 95% of our clients stay with us year over year, and that's not one and done, and then they're off. Generally speaking, the people who fall off started this year and end this year, but generally, otherwise, that other 95% tends to stick around. And again, it's just part of the ongoing value, but also part of the joy of the fact that life is this ever changing experience. Where we are in life is changing, what we want out of life is changing, and that's one of the fun things about financial planning is helping them build the first plan and helping them implement towards the first plan, and then helping them evolve over time to accomplish what they want as their goals change. It's really, really a fun thing. And it's also just, I'll say, as a guilty pleasure, right? The number of people who will say, hey, we're expecting, we haven't told anybody else, but we thought you should know, or hey, I actually am going to put in my 2 weeks next week. I thought you should know. Just the amount of confidence people put in the relationship they have with us is just one of the great pleasures of this work. So let's pivot away from when you started to maybe just the whole journey over the past year. So, what do you think have been the biggest learning moments?
I think watching you in meetings, especially in the early stages when we don't know as much about the person yet, they're new, and how much you put a lot of effort into letting them talk and making sure they talk. You could talk for hours if you wanted to. You're very good at it. You have a lot to say and a lot to teach. You do that around the office for us. But as soon as there's a client in the room, it's you asking open-ended questions and genuinely wanting to know about their lives, remembering what they're saying, being curious, following up. It's I think that stuck out to me the most is like, oh, just as long as they're talking, it's good because we're learning about them, we're getting to know them better, and it's a more intimate relationship with clients than I thought.
Sure. And I guess I appreciate that. It's very complimentary of me. What do you think you've learned, or what's been the biggest thing that's been impressed upon you? Maybe not as a byproduct of just watching me do this.
As far as like other people here, or just like the technical aspects of the job, because I also remember every mistake I've ever made on a form when I didn't check a box or something. That's burned into my brain as well.
The School of Lessons Learned teaches the best classes, right? You can only make a mistake once. Um, I'd say in general, it could be from Greg, it could be from Daniel, it could just be from being in the environment or studying finance. Really, whatever you think has been a great learning experience or a big life lesson in the process of just getting more involved in this financial world.
Mm. My favorite is comparing you and Greg and other Daniel now. You're all so very different in a lot of ways in the way you go about things and your organization systems and the way you talk to your clients. But you all arrive at the end goal of knowing them well, doing a good job. But especially when Greg joined, because at first it was just you and I for so long, and I was used to your process and the way you do things. And he's quite different from you. I've really liked watching the different personalities work and do everything so differently, but end at the same point.
What has stood out to you in the experience that was entirely different from what you expected?
A lot of your clients consider you a friend, like ones that came on and didn't know you before. Obviously, some of them are like, I think your mom is one of your clients, like people that you've met after that are new here. I can see your calendar. I've been able to see it for the last year. I know what you're doing outside of work, and you are friends with some of them. And I've seen enough people approach you in public. We've done plenty of things out in the community, and it's clear that they value you and trust you just beyond financial things. And I've really liked watching those interactions.
So I'm curious, why is that different than what you expected? Or what did you expect in lieu of that?
I guess I just never thought people would, like you said, you're one of the first people to hear news. They say, oh, we're expecting, but nobody knows yet. Or some big life change happens, and you're one of the first people they call, whether or not it's really relevant to their finances. It's not like they're just calling to tell you a number. They want to loop you in, and they want you to know about their lives you're like at the forefront of their mind, I guess. Whereas like, people have attorneys and things, but I don't think they're calling them for chit chat about life updates.
That might depend on whether they bill by the hour or not, but I digress. No shade intended, attorneys. I love talking to you guys. What does it feel like to work in a financial planning firm day to day?
There's more variety than I expected, which is good. There's ongoing quarterly meetings, making new plans for people and updating the existing ones. But, there's a certain element of filling out forms, and I have to call Charles Schwab all the time and untangle things there. So it's a lot of going through the phone tree and being on hold, which is not my favorite, but it does provide variety, and that's good. And then I always like the meetings with new clients because I like meeting new people. So between all of the above, I don't have much to complain about despite the Charles Schwab phone tree.
Hey, if I don't have much to complain about, that's as high a compliment as I can be paid in finance. I will say my least favorite question is what is a day in the life like? Because it's like, oh God, what day, what week, what time of year? It's always so different. It's one of the things that keeps it interesting is, occasionally you have sort of a rote Monday or Tuesday, but like it's just uncommon to have a day that's completely identical one day to the next. So at least from that standpoint, it's always a little bit more enjoyable. So you have your investment advisor license now. Congratulations. You are a Series 65 investment advisor representative. So as of the day of this coming out, you should be fully active as an associate wealth planner at My Wealth Planners. So what does the future look like?
Hopefully a lot of conversations with new people. As I've been saying this whole time, I love talking to new people and getting to know them.
The Science of Wealth is produced by My Wealth Planners, a registered investment advisor in Colorado. The theme song is This Is Your Time by Dan Phillips. The podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not investment advice or any other form of advice. Not all material discussed on the podcast is appropriate for every individual in every circumstance, so you should consult with a certified financial planner, tax professional, or legal professional as appropriate before attempting to apply any of the subjects, strategies, or tactics discussed on the podcast.